Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 27th January 2018. The first article, ASEAN Rising. The ASEAN embrace the other article, both of them are related, so we will deal with them together. The first is, any relationship between two nations, between two blocs, it has both symbolism and substance. The symbolism brings the countries together and brings warmth in the relationship, but substance is one that sustains them for long. So in this context, the Republic Day parade and ASEAN leaders watching the Republic Day parade is more symbolic. Then what is the substance, the follow-up action, and then outcomes of this particular symbolism is going to be the substance. Here we need to understand what ASEAN needs from us and what India needs from ASEAN. Remember carefully, connectivity is very much important for trade to flourish. So most of the connectivity projects of India with ASEAN are delayed beyond time. In these circumstances, the trilateral highway between India, Thailand, Myanmar, Kaladan multimodal project, Thamu Kalai rail link, all these have to be expedited. And second, what ASEAN sees from India, you can understand it from Singapore former Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew statement. What he stated is, India shall act proactively as a balancing power in the region. So, ASEAN looks for India for a greater role. But is India standing to it is the question. And second aspect here, the geographical proximity has to be converted into trade potential. And ASEAN's trade with West is declining due to decrease in demand. And it is also looking towards India and other countries over here, South Asia, to rise its trade. So India has to provide a necessary gateway for the ASEAN. And what India wants from ASEAN, yes, especially the services sector. The major reason why regional comprehensive economic partnership is not moving forward is ASEAN is not interested to allow Indian workmen and Indian services. So in these circumstances, both ASEAN and India has to come together to reap the benefit of their geographical proximity that needs proactive action from both the sides. And second aspect is natural partners in Asian century. This is about India-China relations. First, we need to remember that the global power structure is changing. How is it changing? It is moving from America, Europe to Asia. So previously, America was central to the global power structure. Now, assertiveness of China is making it central to global power structure. And second is, irrespective of the size, the technology and hardware power, it has made the US and Europe powerful. In spite of being small, Germany, France, and then Japan, these have yielded a huge global power. Now, human resources are playing an important role. Innovation is playing an important role in global power. So, 21st century, global power structure is changing. And second is, land to ocean. The power game is moving from land to ocean. And in the ocean, previously it was at Atlanto-Pacific. Now it is changing to Indo-Pacific. Previously it was called as Asia-Pacific. The name is now changed to Indo-Pacific. So, in these circumstances, what made this change to happen? If I have to find only one single factor, I can say it as rise of China. And India is considered as emerging global power by many countries by seeing it from the China's perspective. Remember carefully, India's rise to superpower status is not just based on her inherent strengths. It is to counterbalance the growing China in the Asian region. So, Obama's pivot to Asia was considered as a rebalancing tactic, and China has firmly believed that it was a containment of its rise. So China calls its rise as a peaceful rise. So in this, how China and India shall grow together and in the process how India can reap the benefits of becoming a superpower that we need to understand. First, any superpower needs a strong military presence, and second is strong economic presence. After that, a stable relations within the region. Does India have these three? Probably not. With regard to the hardware power or military power, India is the largest importer of the arms. India is the second largest importer after Saudi Arabia. It is the only democracy spending so much on these imports. So that's why developing indigenous military hardware industry is essential. In the meanwhile, it can depend upon United States for the same. And second, with regard to the technology-driven economic power, already pharmaceutical industry, information technology industry, India proved itself. But India has to learn the art of asserting itself with regard to this technology. And third, stable relations in the region. In this, South Asia, India is always hyphenated with Pakistan. India itself starts looking beyond Pakistan. And second, India-China relations, a stable relations between these two, and early settlement of the border disputes will always be beneficial for India. What India has to do for this? So India has to avoid going into the space where China is having an irritant. Similarly, China shall stop coming into India's the discomfort space. India's discomfort was with Pakistan. So China-Pakistan relationship has to confine to such a level that it shall not cause damage to the India's interest. Similarly, India-USA relations shall not cause damage to the China's interest, especially in the South China Sea. That is what is the author suggests. Finally, what we can state is, India-China have many synergies to become partners, and China recognizes India's power to grow as a global leader. And in this context, it is more the mistrust and misunderstanding that has to be handled. That is what Mr. Subramanya Swamy talks about. The oil risk. Oil prices are rising. So why? Previously, there was shale balancing of the oil prices. The US shale has reduced the oil prices to their lowest. And even the production costs are not being taken by the OPEC countries. And many of the OPEC countries are facing crisis, including Saudi Arabia. It's a good news that the barrel price has reached to $70. Probably it's not so good news for the consumer countries such as India. So how India can hedge its risks? So there are various proposals on its table. The first is it has to tap its indigenous resources. Second, what China does. So China, it tries to bring in various reserves or buy various strategic fields in the other countries. India also can try that. And third aspect is building a reserve of oil, a strategic reserve of oil. These are the three things India can look into. So by and large, by policy changes, India can bring in more oil which is there underneath on its soil. Now let's take why these oil prices are rising. What are the consequences to India? One is the fallen dollar price is stated to be the major reason. And what are the consequences? Oil has multiplier effect. It means it can affect multiple sectors and price rise in general that causes inflation. This rise in inflation is going to damage the entire sector in India. That's how we can put it as. And once the inflation comes up, the government has to balance that. How the government has to do it, either with subsidies or tax rationalization. If you go through subsidies, oil marketing companies such as HPCL and BPCL will be worst affected. So the best way forward for the government is tax rationalization. That's what we can put it as. Now front page, India should be proactive ASEAN. So that's what. India in developing connectivity, trade relations, and acting as a balancing power in ASEAN. Everywhere, India is expected to be proactive rather than reactive. That's how we can put it as. So India's relations with Myanmar will effectively reflect this particular statement. So there is moving forward and backward with regard to Myanmar relations with India. So after the hard pursuit, there was differences with Myanmar military leadership. And then Rohingya crisis, the Prime Minister's stand was criticized in India. And then India wanted to support the Myanmar state. Later, India wants to support the Bangladesh on Rohingya crisis. So, this flip-flopping of India, it shows that lack of clarity on the issues with regard to ASEAN. And second, what this Republic Day parade show us, the diversities meeting each other. So India's diversity, India's colors meeting the ASEAN diversity and its ethnicities. That's how we can put it as. Next is, remember the statement of Prime Minister. Indo-Pacific region is indispensable for India's future. So the global power structure, how it is changing, that's what is quite important. And in your answer, Indo-Pacific region indispensable for India's future. It is stated by our Foreign Secretary, stated by Prime Minister, everyone. And here for prelims, understand certain weaponry which has been exhibited over here. One is nearby. It is subsonic missile and it is compared with the Tomahawk of United States of America. Rudra, advanced light helicopter. Akash, surface to air missile. BrahMos, our cruise missile developed in association with Russia. These are all on display. Just try to remember them. Trump pushes America first. You know, what are the points of the Trump? America first does not mean America alone. And how the global trade relations are changing. Previously, multilateral relations were prominent. We are shifting from multilateral to bilateral relations. And second, Trump has accused of few countries of price rigging and also, stealing the intellectual properties and raising the subsidies to evade the competition. Probably these are made in relation to China in particular. Armed forces said to be reduced in Northeast. You know that Armed Forces Special Powers Act is one of the major reasons for alienation of the people living in Northeast. Wherever the state uses disproportionate force and violates the rights of the people, alienation of the people with the state is common. So Northeast Jammu and Kashmir and their alienation can also be explained from the perspective of the human rights violation. So in this context, as insurgency is decreased in Northeast, the government wants to reduce the boots on ground. So that's why it is trying to conduct a security audit in this matter. And coming to the news page further, impeachment plan in limbo. You know that the opposition is proposed for the impeachment of Chief Justice of India, Mr. Deepak Mishra, and probably it may not see the light of the day. That's what this article is about. Trump must walk the talk. President Trump has clearly accused Pakistan of promoting instability and terrorism in Afghanistan. So, former president of Afghanistan, Karzai, says that the President Trump has to take a sincere action against the Pakistan for its role in Afghanistan. And the next is ASEAN colors add to India's celebrations of diversity. Again, it was not just this before. I can put it as Indian diversity and ASEAN diversity. It has made the Republic Day colorful like never before. That's how we can see it as. Trump reaches out to business elite. Again, so the Davos World Economic Forum Summit is going on, and what President Trump has stated is America is going to be an industrial power very soon. And there is no better time to invest in America than now. He's trying to sell America at the World Economic Forum. That's what he talks about. Again, he accused China of rigging the currency and also stealing the intellectual property and offering for industrial subsidies to distort the trade. These are the things which he spoke about. India-ASEAN targets swift deal on RCEP. In the previous section, I told you that RCEP is going to be a major trade force in the ASEAN region. So India is going to be left out if we do not join soon. And what are the objections of India? RCEP is centrally focused on goods. So because of this, China's goods can be dumped into India. And India wants a greater role for these services. But to what extent services are being taken up seriously under RCEP is a question. And intellectual property rights and related norms are much tougher in RCEP compared to WTO norms. These are the objections that are being raised by India. So in this context, India and ASEAN have decided to promote both digital and physical connectivity. We have discussed about the physical connectivity now. Then, Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity by 2025, ASEAN ICT Master Plan are meant to enhance the digital connectivity. Government relaxes pension plan norms, Atal Pension Yojana. What is this Atal Pension Yojana? It is for unorganized industrial workers who are in the age group 18 to 40 years. They can save the money which they can receive as pension after 60 years. So they can save the money of what they wish, and government will contribute the maximum of 1000 rupees or 50% of their actual contribution, whichever is low. And it is administered by Pension Fund Regulatory Development Authority. That is what is the factual point we need to understand. Why is it in news now? Small finance companies and also payment banks are allowed to participate in Atal Pension Yojana. That's why it has come into the news. So this is what the newspaper today is. Thank you very much and all the best.